Attention, this is a critical broadcast for all survivors. This is not a test. You are listening to Radio Survival, broadcasting live from our secure, isolated location. This is your lifeline in the midst of chaos. My name is Jack Patterson, and I'll be your voice today as we navigate these darkest of hours together. As you know, the world as we knew it has ended. It's no longer about what was, but what we can still save from what is left. And together, we may just have a chance. Let me make one thing clear. This is not a drill. What we're facing is real, and it's happening right now. Reports of the infected, people once thought to be normal, are flooding in from every corner of the globe. Authorities are overwhelmed. Military forces scattered. The outbreak, the zombie apocalypse, has reached catastrophic levels. The virus, the one that turns people into what we now call the undead, is sweeping across continents, claiming lives at a terrifying speed. It started with a few isolated outbreaks, but now we are seeing cities fall in mere hours. We're receiving breaking news from our sources. The zombie virus has now reached over 80% of urban centers worldwide. Just this morning, reports came in from what was once the thriving city of New York. Now, nothing but a ghost town, overrun by the undead. If you're hearing this broadcast, chances are you are one of the lucky few who hasn't been consumed by this nightmare yet. As many of you know, this outbreak, this plague of the undead, began in the northern regions of Europe. Early cases showed the infected were no different than ordinary humans, but within days, they turned. Now the world calls them walkers, biters, or even deadheads. These aren't people anymore. They're not like us. They don't think, they don't feel, they hunt. And with each passing hour, their numbers multiply. The virus doesn't discriminate. It moves fast, spreads even faster. It only takes one bite, one scratch, and you're gone. The worst part? There's no cure, no vaccine, no salvation. In the beginning, many tried to contain it. Governments acted quickly, issuing martial law and establishing quarantines, but it was too late. Too many were already infected. Too many had already fallen. Military bases are now ground zero for these creatures, as once thriving centers of resistance have become overrun, leaving only a few survivors, if any. Cities have descended into chaos, and the ones that haven't fallen yet are struggling just to stay standing. We have reports now, unconfirmed, but growing more consistent, that groups of the undead are getting smarter. They're starting to organize. We've heard stories of them swarming key locations, power stations, radio towers, even military bases. If this is true, if they're adapting to our strategies, things are about to get much, much worse. In the early days, many believed this would be over soon. They believed the zombie outbreak would burn out, that humanity would rise again. But as the days stretch on, we've learned the harsh reality. Survival is not guaranteed. It never was. It's a race now, race against time, against the undead, against the hunger and desperation that's beginning to set in. Food and water supplies are dwindling. Lawlessness is spreading. And those of you listening right now, in this moment, you are our last hope. We're not sure how much longer we'll be able to stay connected. The signal is already unstable, and we've had several interruptions today. But for now, we are still here. We are still broadcasting, and as long as we are, we will give you every bit of information that can help you survive the zombie apocalypse. We will guide you through this madness, and if you can hear this, you are not alone. There is still hope, and we will hold on to it. If you are just tuning in, we have confirmed reports that large parts of the United States have already fallen to the undead. Cities like New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, and Miami have been completely overrun by the zombie horde. We are receiving eyewitness accounts of survivors trapped inside what was once the safest places. Military bunkers, shelters, and safe zones are all at risk. Survivors have taken to the radio to plead for help, but the message is clear. There is no help coming. There's no one to save us but ourselves. So, what does that mean for you? How do you stay alive in the face of such overwhelming odds? I won't sugarcoat this. Surviving the zombie apocalypse isn't going to be easy, but it's possible. The first rule, stay quiet. Noise attracts them. Do not, under any circumstance, make unnecessary sounds. If you can, find a place to barricade yourself. Lock the doors, board up the windows. Do not leave unless you absolutely have to. The undead are attracted to movement. Do not trust the dead to stay dead. They don't. They never stop coming. You're likely hearing the chaos outside. That's the sound of a world unraveling as the undead are taking over. But right now, you're in a place where the noise can't reach you. For now, you're safe. But how long will that last? No one knows. The world is changing, and we can either adapt or we'll fall just like the others. We've been getting calls from survivors asking what to do next. And while I can't give you all the answers, I can give you the tools to make it through the day. We'll talk about that in the next segment. But before we do, let me remind you one thing. You're not alone. You're not the only ones left. There's a community out there, and together we will survive. Stay tuned. The worst may be yet to come, but we'll face it together. This is Radio Survival, and we'll be right back after this transmission, if we can. We've been monitoring the situation closely, and I regret to inform you that it's worsening. As of today, the infection has spread to nearly 90% of the world's urban areas. No region has remained untouched by the scourge of the undead. We've received reports of outbreaks in every major city across every continent. Even the most remote locations are not immune. In North America, cities like Los Angeles, Chicago, and Dallas are now nothing more than graveyards, overrun by the infected. The military attempted to fortify areas of the cities, but their efforts have been futile. Urban centers are in a state of total collapse. Roads are clogged with abandoned vehicles. Skyscrapers, once symbols of human achievement, are now hollow, eerie structures, echoing only with the groans of the undead as they wander aimlessly. The National Guard was deployed to some of the hardest hit regions, but they were quickly overwhelmed. The infected have proven more resilient, more coordinated than anyone could have imagined. We've been receiving first-hand accounts from survivors in New York City, where the situation is grim. One survivor, who we'll call Thomas, reached out to us this morning. He describes the city as a nightmare. Once a bustling hub, now nothing more than an apocalyptic wasteland. The streets are littered with the remains of those who couldn't escape, and the infected have started to group together in larger numbers, more dangerous than ever. According to Thomas, there are swarm-like movements in the city. Once they roamed alone, but now they seem to be gathering in clusters, making it impossible to avoid them. He says that every street he ventures down is either blocked by the undead or by survivors who have already barricaded themselves, unsure if it's safe to let anyone in. Across the Atlantic, reports from London paint a similar picture. The British government has declared martial law, but it's already too late. Armed patrols roam the streets in a desperate attempt to contain the spread. But they're not enough. Once the infection began to spread rapidly, attempts to contain it through mass quarantines and curfews failed. People in the outer districts have been left to fend for themselves, as soldiers and law enforcement abandon their posts in the face of mounting casualties. The city is eerily silent at night, save for the sound of screams that echo through the streets, often interrupted by the low moans of the undead. The situation in the Middle East is even worse. The infection spread like wildfire through densely populated urban areas. Major cities like Tehran and Dubai were quickly overwhelmed. The heat and chaos have only compounded the destruction. At night, it's as if the world itself has turned against humanity. Sandstorms in the desert have made it nearly impossible to track the movements of the undead, and there are reports of them gathering in large numbers, hiding in the shadows. The government issued evacuation orders, but the roads quickly became clogged, and many families were trapped in their homes as the infection continued to spread. On the other side of the world, in South America, we are hearing reports from Rio de Janeiro. The military attempted to create a defensive perimeter around the city, but it collapsed within hours. The survivors we've managed to reach describe a terrifying environment. The sky has turned dark and overcast, casting a permanent shadow over the city. The once vibrant streets are filled with the moans of the infected, while the city's remaining inhabitants, if they haven't already been consumed, are fighting to stay alive. Food and water supplies are dangerously low, and most survivors are holed up in buildings, too afraid to venture outside for fear of being swarmed. Meanwhile, here in the United States, we're seeing major cities completely collapse under the pressure. In Atlanta, Georgia, the situation has gone from bad to worse. The military tried to establish safe zones, but the infection spread so rapidly that even fortified military outposts fell within hours. The last transmission we received from one of those outposts was chilling. Soldiers, under heavy fire from the undead, urged any remaining survivors to get out while you can. But by the time those orders reached the public, it was too late. Now, the reality is becoming painfully clear. The infection is here to stay. It isn't something we can stop. It's not just an outbreak. It's an epidemic, unlike anything humanity has ever faced. The world we knew is gone. Now, it's about survival. It's about finding safety, staying out of the reach of the undead, and doing whatever it takes to make it through another day. The weather in many regions is only making things worse. The usual seasonal storms have intensified. We've heard reports of freak tornadoes and hurricanes in places where they normally don't occur. Experts believe the increased levels of heat and humidity, along with the ongoing destruction, have contributed to these unnatural storms. Some survivors believe the weather itself has become part of the apocalypse, as if the world is fighting back against what we've done to it. No one knows if this is true, but there's no denying the destructive force of these natural disasters. We've also heard reports of survivors beginning to turn on each other. The strain of living in constant fear, knowing that the undead are always just a few steps away, has started to break down social order. We've received multiple messages from groups of survivors who have formed barricades, isolated from the rest of the world. In some cases, these groups are no longer welcoming newcomers, afraid of what they might bring. In other cases, we've heard of violent clashes between survivors over scarce resources. The fear and paranoia are becoming just as deadly as the undead themselves. As we speak, the military continues to fight a losing battle. Their response, despite their best efforts, has been overwhelmed by the scale of the infection. Helicopters are in the air, dropping supplies where they can, but they're often met with resistance from crowds of infected. Ground forces are spread thin, trying to maintain control over smaller regions, while larger metropolitan areas continue to fall into chaos. Martial law has been declared in many countries, but the reality is that it's too little, too late. Major international borders are being closed, but that hasn't stopped the infected from spreading, often moving into rural areas once thought to be safe. Entire regions are being abandoned, and governments are struggling to even keep basic services operational. The scale of this catastrophe is unlike anything we've ever experienced. But we will continue to broadcast. We will continue to provide you with the information you need to survive. The road ahead is uncertain, and there is no easy solution. But we're in this together, and no matter how bad it gets, we will not give up. We will not lose hope. Stay tuned. More updates are coming as the situation continues to evolve. Be prepared for what's next. We'll be back shortly. Keep your wits about you. Every moment counts in this new world. If you're still listening, you've already made the most important decision of your life, staying informed. But that's just the start. Now, we need to discuss what you can do to keep yourself alive. This isn't a drill, this is survival. And if you want to make it through this, you'll need to act decisively, stay alert, and follow these survival instructions to the letter. Barricade your shelter. The first priority for any survivor is to secure shelter. If you're already inside your home or another location that seems safe, it's time to ensure that it's properly fortified. Barricading your shelter should be your top priority. Close all windows and doors and reinforce them with any materials you can find, boards, heavy furniture, or even scrap metal. The more secure you make it, the better your chances of surviving an attack. Start with your most vulnerable entry points, the front and back doors. Use nails, screws, and any other tools you have to make sure that these doors will not open easily. A hammer and a few strong nails can go a long way in securing your position. If you have the ability, use thick boards to reinforce your windows. The thicker the barrier, the harder it will be for the undead to break through. Zombies are relentless, and they'll try to get in however they can. If you don't have boards, make use of whatever you can. Mattresses, furniture, even large bookshelves. Just remember, everything you barricade should be sturdy enough to hold up against the relentless pressure of undead trying to break in. Don't forget your escape routes. Even the best barricades can fail, so plan an escape route in case things get out of hand. Ideally, choose an exit that isn't directly visible from the outside, and make sure you can get there quickly and quietly. You never know when you might need to leave in a hurry. Stay out of sight. Zombies are attracted to noise, movement, and light, and you don't want to make yourself an easy target. Whether you're inside your shelter or on the move, you need to minimize your visibility. Keep all windows covered. If you have curtains, use them to block any light that might attract attention. If you don't have curtains, use sheets or blankets, anything that can block the view from the outside. When you're moving around inside, avoid making unnecessary noise. Keep your movements slow and deliberate. If you need to move, do so quietly, and try to avoid bumping into things that could make a sound. Keep your voice down. Shouting or speaking loudly could draw unwanted attention. The same goes for if you need to leave your shelter. Move carefully without running, and avoid any unnecessary noise that could give away your position. Remember, every sound you make could alert nearby zombies to your presence. If you're forced to move outside, try to find natural cover. Trees, bushes, and large rocks can all help conceal your movements. Avoid open areas, as these make you highly visible. Stick to shadows, back alleys, and places that offer the most concealment. Zombies are less likely to notice you if you stay in the dark or under cover. Always check your surroundings before stepping out into the open. Arm yourself, but don't rely on guns alone. Weapons are your next line of defense. If you have firearms, great, but remember that guns are loud. Firing a gun will not only alert zombies nearby, but it may also draw others from farther away. As effective as firearms can be in stopping a zombie, they come with a big drawback: noise. Use firearms as a last resort, only when absolutely necessary. If you can find them, gather other weapons as well, such as bladed tools like machetes or axes. These don't make noise and can be very effective at keeping zombies at bay. If you can't find guns, don't worry. There are still many tools you can use to protect yourself. Crowbars, shovels, and hammers can all serve as excellent makeshift weapons. The goal is to remain as quiet as possible and neutralize threats without attracting attention. The key is to go for the head. If you can take out the brain, you've stopped the zombie in its tracks. And remember, zombies are slow and relatively clumsy. Stay calm and composed, and you can handle most situations. However, weapons should only be a secondary measure. Your priority is staying quiet and avoiding conflict. A well-hidden shelter and strategic thinking will keep you safe much longer than a weapon ever could. Keep moving and never travel alone. The next tip is simple but crucial. Never travel alone unless you absolutely have to. Zombies are relentless, but they're slow and predictable. Humans, on the other hand, are fast and unpredictable, making us much more likely to survive if we work together. Find other survivors, people who have managed to make it this far, and form a group. A group can help you keep watch, assist with gathering resources, and provide mutual protection when things get tough. If you don't have a group already, now is the time to start looking for other survivors. Check abandoned homes, local stores, or nearby buildings. However, be cautious. Some people may not be as trustworthy as they appear. If you find a group, be careful not to let your guard down. Zombies aren't the only threat in this world anymore. When you travel with a group, make sure everyone is armed and ready to defend themselves. Divide tasks among your group members to ensure everything gets done. One person could scout ahead while others gather supplies or maintain the shelter. Make sure to designate someone to keep watch at all times, especially during the night. Keep supplies in check. In a world where resources are scarce, managing your supplies is critical. First and foremost, food and water will be your primary concern. Gather as much as you can. Canned goods, dried food, and anything non-perishable that can sustain you for long periods. You can also look for local sources of food, but be mindful of the dangers that might lurk in those areas. It's better to carry your supplies with you rather than relying on external sources, as food sources may dry up or be claimed by other survivors. Water is just as critical as food, if not more so. Make sure you have access to fresh water. If you're in a city or populated area, look for places that are likely to have water. Restaurants, public buildings, or stores that might have bottled water in stock. If you can't find bottled water, use purification, tablets, or water filters to make any nearby water sources safe to drink. Never drink from a river, lake, or pond without purifying it first. You'll also need a first aid kit. Injuries are inevitable, whether from a zombie attack or just from the harsh conditions. Make sure your first aid kit is stocked with bandages, antiseptics, painkillers, and any other supplies you can find. If you're able, search for hospitals or pharmacies for additional supplies. You may even need to gather medications for any chronic conditions or illnesses that require specific treatment. Other supplies to gather include flashlights, batteries, and fire-starting tools. Light sources are essential for nighttime, and fire will be invaluable for warmth, cooking, and even keeping zombies at bay. If you can find extra batteries, stockpile them, as these will be necessary for keeping your flashlights and radios working. Be aware of the undead and avoid contact. Zombies are slow, but they are relentless, and they never stop coming. Your primary goal is to avoid them at all costs. Keep track of their movements from a distance and avoid places where they are known to congregate. Always be aware of the risks around you. If you're in a group, take turns watching for zombies and always stay on the lookout. If you hear strange noises or see movement in the distance, don't approach it. Keep your distance. If you're forced to engage a zombie, do so quickly and decisively. Zombies aren't particularly agile, but they're strong and persistent. If you're in close quarters, make sure you aim for the head. This is the only way to guarantee that a zombie will stay down. Avoid close combat if possible, and use tools to neutralize threats from a distance. Stay calm and conserve energy. In a crisis, panic is your worst enemy. It clouds your judgment and makes you more vulnerable to threats. Focus on staying calm, even in the most intense situations. Panic will only increase your chances of making mistakes that could cost you your life. Remember, the zombies aren't going anywhere. Take your time, think through every decision, and conserve your energy. Make sure you eat and drink regularly, but don't waste resources. Every decision you make counts, and the longer you can hold out, the greater your chances of surviving this nightmare. These survival tips are your first line of defense against the zombie apocalypse. Don't wait for the situation to worsen. Act now. The more prepared you are, the higher your chances of surviving what's to come. As if the zombie outbreak wasn't enough to handle, the world is now facing escalating threats that no one could have predicted. The situation is worsening, and what started as a battle for survival is rapidly evolving into something far more terrifying. New challenges are emerging, and the very fabric of our existence is being torn apart by forces no one fully understands. These are not just zombies anymore. The virus and its effects are mutating. The situation is deteriorating faster than anyone expected. Mutated virus, new forms of infection. It was only a matter of time before the virus adapted, but now Reports are flooding in about mutations that have taken the infected to an entirely new level. Survivors in various regions are reporting that the zombies are becoming faster, more aggressive, and even showing signs of intelligence. These mutated creatures are no longer the slow, lumbering masses we've learned to avoid. No, these new zombies are quicker, stronger, and much more dangerous. They don't just mindlessly stumble toward their prey. They are hunting it down. A recent eyewitness account from a survivor in what was once a safe zone in the outskirts of Atlanta paints a chilling picture. A group of survivors was barricaded in an old apartment building when the attack came. Unlike the typical slow-moving zombies, the ones that broke through their defenses moved with purpose and speed. They didn't hesitate. They sprinted. The survivors barely had time to react. They looked different, faster, more alert, one of the survivors reported. It was like they knew exactly where we were hiding. This mutation appears to be spreading rapidly. From reports across several states, survivors are describing similar encounters. Infected creatures that possess heightened aggression and reflexes. Some even claim that the zombies are beginning to work together, coordinating attacks in ways that seem almost strategic. It's as if the virus is evolving to make the infected more of a threat, capable of organizing and hunting more efficiently. This is a new, terrifying phase of the outbreak. The virus is evolving in real time, and the infected we once understood are now something completely different. Failed safe zones and increased infiltration. As if the mutated zombies weren't enough, there's now the terrifying reality that even the safe zones, places where survivors thought they could take refuge, are no longer secure. Breaking news from multiple sources confirms that infiltration is happening at an alarming rate. It started as rumors, whispers among survivors that there had been reports of infected entering supposedly safe zones, but now there are confirmed reports of infected swarming these areas, leaving the survivors trapped and desperate. A report out of the former military base in Nevada paints a grim picture. The base, initially considered one of the safest havens for survivors, has fallen victim to an unprecedented breach. Infected creatures believed to be mutated had somehow bypassed the high-tech security measures put in place. Witnesses describe seeing the infected scale walls, break through reinforced gates, and even infiltrate underground bunkers. Survivors were left with few options: evacuate or risk becoming overwhelmed by the growing horde. It was chaos, one anonymous survivor reported. We thought we were safe. We had food, water, weapons, but nothing could stop them. They came in from everywhere, through tunnels, cracks in the walls. It was like they knew where to go. This revelation has sparked panic among other survivors who had been relying on similar safe zones for shelter and protection. The fact that these infected are finding their way into what were once considered impenetrable locations suggests a horrifying reality. No one is safe. The infected are adapting, becoming smarter and more strategic. These zones were meant to be the last bastion of hope, but they are quickly falling. The growing threat near major cities. The infected are spreading faster than anyone can contain them. Survivors are beginning to realize that the outskirts of cities are no longer safe. As the infection continues to surge, we're receiving unconfirmed reports of massive swarms moving closer to downtown areas. Major cities like New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago are no longer safe zones for survivors. Just hours ago, we received breaking news that downtown Chicago is now overrun. Entire neighborhoods have been claimed by the infected, and survivors who thought they could wait out the chaos are now fighting for their lives. We've also received reports from survivors in New York City, where they are warning that the infection has spread deeper into the city than previously expected. The downtown area is no longer just a zone of occasional attacks. It's now a full-fledged war zone. Emergency services have been overrun, and the military has pulled out. No one is coming to save you, and even the most fortified shelters are now being compromised by the growing number of infected. One survivor's message painted a grim picture. The streets are flooded with them. At first, it was just a few in the alleyways. But now, it's everywhere. They're moving in packs, and they're smart. I don't know how much longer we can last here. If you're in the city, get out now. It's not safe anymore. Downtown areas, once bustling with life, are now teeming with hordes of infected, and the situation is becoming dire. News outlets are advising anyone within major cities to evacuate immediately, if possible. But where can you go? Every direction seems to lead straight into the heart of danger, the emergence of new factions. With the threat of infected growing closer to urban areas, humanity itself is also fracturing. Desperate survivors are beginning to form new factions. Groups not only focused on survival, but on taking advantage of the chaos. Raider groups are emerging, targeting weaker survivors and taking control of valuable resources, including food, medicine, and weapons. They are organized and ruthless, attacking any group or individual they deem weak. It's no longer just about surviving the infected. It's about surviving other humans too. Reports from a survivor group in the suburbs of Phoenix highlight this new threat. "We thought we had a plan," a survivor explained, "but the raiders attacked at night. They came out of nowhere, raiding everything we had. We lost people, and now we don't have enough food to last. It's survival of the fittest out here." These new factions are likely to become a growing concern as the months drag on. As the undead continue to ravage the world, humans are turning on one another in desperate attempts to secure their own survival. The once hopeful notion of unity is quickly fading as people are forced to make impossible choices in the face of scarcity and imminent danger. Uncertain military and government responses. It's becoming increasingly clear that government and military responses to the outbreak are struggling to keep up. Martial law has been declared in several cities, but the results have been mixed at best. Military personnel, while doing their best to maintain order, are facing overwhelming odds. Reports from military sources suggest that personnel are being pulled back from certain areas due to the overwhelming number of infected. Efforts to contain the spread have largely failed, with several national borders becoming completely compromised. A report from the United States government indicates that efforts to curb the spread of the infection in major cities have been unsuccessful. The situation has become too volatile, the government statement said. "We are facing an enemy we don't fully understand. Our military units are overwhelmed, and resources are limited. We recommend evacuation to rural areas if possible." The inability of governments to manage the crisis, combined with the overwhelming rise in the number of infected and the increasing presence of raider groups, leaves the public in a state of despair. How much longer can the military hold their ground? How many more breaches can be tolerated before civilization collapses completely? The situation is growing increasingly dire. What was once a nightmare unfolding in isolated pockets of the world is now a full-scale global disaster. The infected are adapting, human society is fracturing, and there is no guarantee of safety anymore. As the danger grows ever closer, your best chance for survival might be to stay hidden, trust your instincts, and be prepared for whatever horrors await in the days to come. Stay alert. The worst is yet to come. The world as we knew it has come to an end. Now, as the chaos of the zombie apocalypse unfolds, it's the voices of survivors that remind us of the humanity still fighting to survive. Each message, each cry for help, is a testament to the will to live, to push forward despite the seemingly insurmountable odds. In this section, we'll hear from some of you, our listeners, whose experiences echo the fears, hopes, and struggles of those still holding on. These survivor stories bring us face to face with the very real dangers of the apocalypse, while offering moments of vulnerability, courage, and resilience. Listener call-in from Sarah, Atlanta. "Hi, this is Sarah from Atlanta. We're running low on food and need advice. The streets are becoming more dangerous. We thought we were safe here, but it feels like the walls are closing in. Can you help? Sarah's call is a stark reminder of the desperation that survivors face as resources dwindle and the infected become more aggressive. Finding ways to conserve and ration is essential. If you're in a similar position, it's important to consider your immediate surroundings. For Sarah, the key might be to secure additional food sources without risking exposure to the infected. One strategy that could work is to send a small group to nearby stores or markets in search of non-perishable goods. Canned foods, dried goods, and packaged snacks are all good options that will keep you nourished for longer. However, it's important to move quickly and stealthily. Use the cover of night. Avoid large groups, and always stay alert. If you must scavenge during the day, consider working in pairs for safety. Sarah, if you're listening, remember that while food is essential, your safety is paramount. Even in the most desolate situations, taking unnecessary risks can end in disaster. Stay hidden, stay patient, and prioritize the well-being of those around you. The strength of your group lies in the collective spirit, not in how quickly you can gather supplies. Survivor letter from James, Los Angeles. I've been alone since the outbreak. I'm holed up in a small apartment trying to stay out of sight, but I'm starting to lose hope. The isolation is unbearable. I need to know if it's even worth it anymore. Can you share some advice to help me push through? James's letter is one we've received far too often. Survivors isolated in a world of endless horror, struggling not only with the infected, but with their own mental health. The emotional toll of surviving alone is immense. Isolation can make the world feel like it's closing in, and it can be easy to lose track of time, hope, and purpose. James, if you're listening, it's important to remember why you're fighting. You may be alone right now, but you're not truly isolated. The fight for survival is shared by millions around the world. Reach out when you can, even if it's just through radio transmissions or messages in the wind. Look for others. If you can safely join a group of survivors, consider doing so. Strength in numbers is essential when facing an overwhelming enemy, but don't lose yourself to the isolation. The more you stay connected to your humanity, the better your chance of survival, not just physically, but mentally as well. Consider setting small goals each day. Maybe it's checking your supplies, fortifying your shelter, or simply staying awake for one more hour. Whatever it is, these small wins will help keep your morale high. And above all, don't give up. You're stronger than you think, James. You are part of a larger story, and your survival is important. Listener call in from Maria, New York City. Hi, I'm Maria from New York City. The streets are flooded with the infected. I'm trapped on the 12th floor of my apartment building with my brother and a few others. We've managed to block the windows, but we're running low on water. Should we risk trying to escape? Maria's situation highlights the critical decision-making survivors face when trapped in high-risk environments. The key here is risk management. In situations like Maria's, where a group of survivors is holed up with limited resources, escape can feel like the only option. However, rushing into a hostile environment could easily lead to disaster. Maria, our advice is to assess the situation carefully before taking any action. If possible, try to conserve the water you have left and ration it out carefully. Look for any ways to collect rainwater, or even consider purifying water from nearby sources. If there's no immediate danger from the infected inside your building, wait for the storm to pass, but always keep an eye on your surroundings. If things worsen and it becomes a matter of life or death, plan your escape route meticulously. In some cases, it's better to stay put and fortify your position rather than risk exposure. A window or a balcony might seem like an easy exit, but the streets below could be teeming with infected. Always have an escape plan ready, but make sure it's not driven by panic. Evaluate your resources and only take action when absolutely necessary. Survivor. Letter from Kelly, Boston. I'm a mother of two. We've managed to stay safe for the most part, but now it's just the three of us. I'm struggling to keep their spirits up. How do I make sure they know I'm doing everything I can to keep them safe? Kelly's letter is a poignant reminder of the emotional and mental strain survivors face, particularly those who are responsible for the well-being of loved ones. As a mother, Kelly's primary concern is ensuring her children feel secure, loved, and hopeful in the face of overwhelming danger. Kelly, if you're listening, here's something important. Your strength is their strength. Kids look to their parents for reassurance. And though you may feel overwhelmed, your calm demeanor will help keep their fears at bay. Children are remarkably resilient, and they'll follow your lead. Try to keep things as normal as possible. This might mean telling stories, playing games, or singing songs to take their minds off the situation. Focus on hope, Kelly. Remind them that there is still beauty in the world. There are still moments worth living for. You may not have all the answers, but your love and determination will guide them through the darkest times. Teach them survival skills if they're old enough. Empowering them to help keep the group safe can give them a sense of purpose and strength. Most importantly, never underestimate the power of your presence. Just being there, offering comfort, will help them stay strong. As long as you have each other, you still have a chance. Listener call in from Alex, Chicago. We've made it through a lot so far, but there's been no sign of rescue. The government has abandoned us. It's getting harder to trust anyone. How do we know who to trust? Alex's call brings up an unsettling truth. Trust is becoming increasingly scarce. In a world where the infected aren't the only threat, it's becoming harder to tell who the real enemy is. People are becoming desperate, and trust is being eroded with every passing day. Alex, if you're listening, your caution is valid. Trust your instincts. If someone feels unsafe or raises red flags, don't ignore it. Trust in your gut and in the strength of your group. Building bonds with others will take time, but it's crucial that you do so with the utmost caution. Be aware of potential betrayal or opportunistic behavior, and always have a plan to protect yourself and your loved ones. While it's vital to remain wary, don't let fear consume you. Humanity's strength lies in our capacity to form connections even in the most dire situations. But those connections must be built on mutual respect and trust. Always weigh the risk versus the reward when letting others into your group. As we hear from these survivors, each facing unique challenges and fears, it's clear that survival in this new world is as much about mental resilience as it is about physical endurance. The voices of our listeners remind us that hope is still alive. There is no clear path forward, but as long as there are survivors like Sarah, James, Maria, Kelly, and Alex, the fight continues. Every decision, every interaction, and every moment of solidarity brings us one step closer to survival. And for those of you out there still holding on, remember this: you're never alone. We're all in this together. The moment has arrived when the stakes have never been higher. The situation has gone from dire to catastrophic. As the world crumbles, the sound of faint cries for help and distant gunfire fills the air. The unrelenting wave of the undead surges forward, and the once safe zones we all trusted are now no longer guaranteed to be safe. In the chaos, we try to keep our connection alive, but the distance between life and death feels closer than ever before. A transmission crackles through the air, breaking the tense silence. The voice you've come to rely on for news and survival instructions is no longer steady. Reports have come in, the safe zones have fallen, and it's worse than we ever imagined. Reports indicate that Safe Zone Alpha, the largest and most secure refuge for survivors in the Midwest, has been breached by a horde of infected. Authorities initially thought they could hold the line, but it seems the sheer number of the infected was underestimated. The barricades fell in a matter of hours, and the last transmission from inside the zone described overwhelming panic as families tried to flee. The military is en route, but it's unclear whether they'll make it in time. The overwhelming tide of despair hits hard, but there is no time to mourn. For every second we waste, someone else is caught in the crossfire, and someone else's life is put on the line. The room where I broadcast feels colder now. I grip the microphone tightly, knowing every word, every update matters. This is the reality of our world now. The infection is spreading faster than anyone could have predicted. As I speak, another update comes in, interrupting the broadcast with the news no one wanted to hear. This is an emergency bulletin from the National Communications Center. Power outages are now affecting the northern regions. We've lost contact with several major cities, and the infection seems to be spreading uncontrollably. If you are receiving this transmission, find shelter immediately and stay quiet. It's not safe to be outside. The faint hum of static fills the air as the broadcast momentarily cuts out. I can hear nothing but the echo of my own thoughts. How long will we be able to keep this connection alive? How much longer can the survivors hear these words before they're silenced forever? It feels like an eternity until the transmission comes back on, but the news is even worse. Reports from the East Coast have confirmed that a massive storm front is rapidly moving towards the northeast. Winds are reaching up to 100 miles per hour, and authorities have issued a flash warning. The storm may further complicate evacuations, and the flooding is already severe in low-lying areas. The terror of the storm is a cruel addition to the already overwhelming crisis, but I don't have the luxury of time to dwell on it. Every second counts, and our only chance at survival is to keep moving forward. We cannot falter now. The weight of the moment hits me harder than ever. Stay with me, people, I urge, though it feels hollow. I'm not sure who I'm speaking to anymore, if anyone is listening at all. But still, I push on, trying to be the voice of hope. Listen, I know it's hard right now, but we can get through this. We just have to keep going. But the weight of the worsening situation makes it harder to stay calm. The sounds outside are unmistakable. The shuffle of footsteps, a moan carried in the wind. My own pulse quickens as the realization hits. We may not be as safe here as we thought. The undead are everywhere. Suddenly, a loud banging sound, like a fist pounding on a door, rattles through the air. My heart skips a beat. I glance nervously at the door to the broadcasting room, but I'm alone. My mind races. Could this be it? Are they already here? Are they breaking through? I check the broadcast equipment. Static again. For a brief, horrifying moment, I think the connection is lost. But then, the sound returns. We're losing power to the transmitter. The technician's voice comes through in a crackled message. If we can't fix it in time, this broadcast will be cut off permanently. Do you understand? We need your help. I don't respond immediately. I know what's happening. The undead are closing in on us. Even here, in what was once a safe location, the infected are getting closer, and the system's failure is the final blow. Our last lifeline to the outside world is about to disappear. In that moment, I realize that even though the military might be on its way, even though the cities may have been barricaded, we cannot rely on anyone but ourselves. The world is fractured. The infected know no boundaries. I hear a muffled shout from outside the room, and then the sound of heavy footsteps. Help! Help us! It's the voice of someone who has managed to survive so far, but their cries are becoming desperate. But I can't leave the broadcast. I can't leave the survivors out there hanging on the edge of their seats, waiting for a sliver of hope to shine through. The technician bursts into the room, fear etched across their face. They're out of breath, and they pull at their hair in frustration. It's gone. The signal's gone. We can't fix it. We have to leave. Now. I hesitate. I can hear the urgency in their voice, but in my heart, I know that if we leave, we may never get another chance to send out the message. This is the only communication that might help those out there still fighting to survive. We can't leave. We have to keep broadcasting. Just a few more minutes. But the technician shakes their head, pulling at their sleeve. You don't understand. They're coming. They're already here. The tension in the air rises to an unbearable level. My palms are slick with sweat. My breath comes in short gasps. The sense of hopelessness threatens to consume me. Will anyone hear this final message? Is it too late for all of us? This is our final broadcast, I say, my voice cracking. Please, if you can hear this, hold on. You're not alone. We will make it through this. We are stronger than we think. The sound of the door behind me creaks, and the room seems to close in. It's almost as if the darkness is closing in from all sides, threatening to swallow everything whole. Stay strong. Stay alive, I whisper, hoping against hope that someone, somewhere, is listening. Then, just as I think the broadcast is about to end, the last burst of static fills the room. Something cuts through the noise, sharp and terrifying. I freeze. We have reports of a new group of survivors, and then nothing. The connection dies. The world around us is crumbling. Our homes, our communities, the very fabric of civilization itself, everything is falling apart. The air is thick with the stench of decay, and fear hangs like a fog over every living soul. But even now, when hope seems so distant, it is more important than ever to remind ourselves of what we're fighting for. Amid the wreckage, amid the chaos, we still have one thing that can never be taken away: each other. In these moments of despair, when it feels as though there's nothing left, I want you to remember this. You're not alone. You might feel isolated, lost, even abandoned at times, but there are others out there who are struggling just like you. People who are waking up every day, fighting not just for survival, but for a chance to rebuild something greater. And it's in these darkest times that our strength as a community shines brightest. I know how it feels, sitting in a dark room alone, heart pounding, with no clear direction. The silence is deafening. The uncertainty is suffocating. It's easy to fall into despair, to wonder how much longer you can go on. But there are stories. There are survivors who have made it through the worst of it, and their resilience is what we need to focus on now. One story that has stuck with me throughout these days of chaos is about a small community that managed to escape the destruction of their city by banding together. They face countless challenges, supply shortages, mounting threats from the infected, and emotional strain that almost broke them. But what kept them going wasn't just the drive to survive. It was their sense of unity, their bond. There was a father in this group, a man who had lost his wife to the virus months earlier. His daughter, barely 10 years old, clung to him, afraid of what the future held. One night, the infected breached their perimeter, the group was scattered, and the father, in a desperate attempt to protect his daughter, ran straight into the danger. But what happened next wasn't what anyone expected. He didn't run away. In the face of overwhelming odds, he fought. He fought for his daughter, for the people who were depending on him. And through the thick of the chaos, he found the strength to protect his daughter and the rest of the group. They made it to a safe location, an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Exhausted, battered, and covered in dirt, they had nothing left but each other, and that was enough. They huddled together, and for a fleeting moment, they found a sense of peace in their unity. Now, more than ever, we need to look to stories like this. We need to understand that survival isn't just about stockpiling food or finding weapons. It's about the strength we find in the people around us. It's about the emotional bonds we create, the support we offer, and the love that endures even in the darkest hours. In the chaos, you may feel as though there's nothing left to hold on to. The ground beneath you might feel unstable, and the world outside might seem like an insurmountable wall. But within each of us lies the power to rise above it. There is still good in the world, there is still kindness, and there are still people who want to help. It's easy to forget that in times like this, but I'm here to remind you. We've all had our moments of fear, our nights spent awake, listening for the sounds of the infected or the rush of wind that signals a storm is on its way. But it's what we do in these moments that defines us. It's how we come together when everything is falling apart. In these difficult times, remember the simple truth. Unity saves lives. When we stand together, we create strength. When we lean on each other, we find the resilience we didn't know we had. You don't have to face this alone. None of us do. The connection between us isn't just a lifeline. It's a beacon in the darkness, a guiding light that can lead us to safety, to hope, and to survival. And every step you take forward, no matter how small, brings us one step closer to the life we once knew. But unity doesn't just mean relying on others, it also means lifting others up. Sometimes, the greatest act of survival is simply offering a word of encouragement. Sometimes, the smallest kindness can make the biggest difference. So, I want to take a moment to share something that can give you strength in these trying times. Hope doesn't always come from the outside. It often comes from within. Remember the times before all of this, the moments of joy, of love, of connection that made life worth living. Keep those memories close. They're not gone. Those moments were part of who you are. And they can be a source of strength now, when you need it most. There's another story I want to share with you. It's about a young woman named Elena, who lost her family during the initial outbreak. She was left with nothing but the clothes on her back, walking through desolate streets, trying to find any hint of safety, but she didn't give up. She found herself in a small survivor group, a band of strangers who welcomed her with open arms. At first, she was reluctant to trust anyone. She had lost so much, and the world around her was unrecognizable. But as she spent more time with the group, she began to understand something important. Survival isn't just about finding food or shelter. It's about giving others a reason to live. Elena became the emotional backbone of the group. When the nights were long and the fear of the infected crept too close, she would remind them that they were still human, that they still had purpose, that together they could overcome anything. Her strength wasn't in her ability to fight, but in her capacity to inspire. We all have that power within us. In these bleakest moments, it's the human spirit that remains unbroken. That's what makes us different from the infected. That's what will keep us moving forward. So as you sit here, wherever you are, know this. We are in this together. The road ahead will be difficult, and there will be times when it feels like there's no way out. But if we keep fighting, if we keep supporting each other, there is no force on earth that can take away our hope. Surviving isn't about being the strongest or the most prepared. It's about finding strength in the people around you, in the community you build, and in the hope you share. Hold on to that hope. Hold on to each other, and together we will get through this. Never forget, you are part of something bigger than yourself. You are part of humanity's fight to survive, and together we will rise. As we near the end of this broadcast, I want to remind you of what we've learned today. The world we once knew is gone, and survival is now our greatest priority. We've discussed the critical steps you need to take to stay alive, to find shelter, to protect yourself, and to stay connected to others. Remember, every decision you make in these moments could mean the difference between life and death. First, barricade your home or shelter. Do not leave unless absolutely necessary. The infected are unpredictable, and even the slightest mistake can put you at risk. Stay quiet. Stay hidden. Every sound you make could draw them in. And above all, never stop moving. The longer you stay in one place, the more vulnerable you become. But do so with caution. Any careless action could turn your safe haven into a death trap. Remember, water is more important than food right now. If you're running low on supplies, prioritize drinking over eating. You can go without food for a while, but dehydration will kill you much faster. Secure your water source and conserve what you have. If you're near an urban area, avoid it unless absolutely necessary. Cities have become death zones, crawling with infected and desperate survivors who will do anything to take what's yours. Next, if you're traveling, always move during the night. The cover of darkness will give you the best chance to avoid detection. Keep your senses sharp. Any noise, any disturbance in your surroundings could signal danger. Stay alert, stay aware, and trust your instincts. They will save you when nothing else can. And above all, stay connected. I can't emphasize this enough. You might feel isolated, but there are survivors out there. And together, we stand a chance. Form alliances, share resources, and never lose sight of the bigger picture. We have to keep moving forward, even when it feels impossible. It's in our nature to push through. We are resilient. We are strong. Now, I know these instructions can seem overwhelming. The world outside is nothing like it was, and it's easy to feel like there's no hope left. But I promise you, hope is still out there. It's in the people who keep fighting. It's in the small victories, the moments of kindness, and the determination to survive. We've all lost so much, but what we haven't lost is our will to keep fighting. And that's what will carry us through. The truth is, this is just the beginning. The infected are spreading faster than anyone predicted, and there's no telling where this will end. But there's still a chance. There's still a way for us to rebuild. We've survived this long, and with each day that passes, we grow stronger. Before we sign off, I want to remind you of something important. We are in this together. You are not alone in this fight. There is a future for us. And as long as we're alive, we have the power to shape what that future looks like. Now, as we wrap up, I need you to stay tuned. There's still so much more to come. The situation is changing rapidly, and we will continue to bring you the latest updates, the best survival tips, and the stories of those who have made it through. But we need you to stay strong. You need to stay vigilant, stay focused, and keep pushing forward. I know it's hard. I know it feels impossible at times, but I want to leave you with one last thought. Don't give up now. The world may be falling apart, but it's still our world, and we're not done yet. Stay safe, stay strong, and stay with us. And just as I was about to sign off, we've just received breaking news from a source in the northern region. It's difficult to confirm, but there are reports of something worse than the infected. Something that's moving faster, more unpredictable. It's not just people turning anymore. The transmission is fading, but I'm not sure we'll be able to reconnect. I have to leave you with this chilling update. They're not the only threat anymore. Stay tuned. If we can reconnect, we'll bring you more updates. But right now, we have to stay hidden. If you need more updates on this event, please leave a comment below, like, and share this video because we need your support more than ever. And don't forget to subscribe, stay with us, and together we will survive.